Every city has an origin story.
Welcome to Quote the Queen City, where we peel back the pages of Cincinnati's history.
Quote the Queen City! Quote the Queen City!
We unmask a figure who didn't come to Ohio looking for glory. He was a Revolutionary War veteran who went hunting for stolen horses and identified the area as an ideal place for a settlement.
Today, we unveil the origin story of Major Benjamin Stites, his tie to the Queen City. Before there was a Cincinnati, before there was a Losantiville, there was Columbia, and Benjamin Stites was the man who hammered the very first nail into the Ohio frontier.
This is Christy.
And this is our sidekick, Joe.
And this is
Quote the Queen City.
Our story begins out east, long before anyone was thinking about settling the Ohio Valley. Benjamin Stites was born in 1749 in New Jersey. He was the son of Benjamin Stites Sr. and Rachel Kitchell Stites. His family had deep colonial roots. His father was originally from Hempstead on Long Island, New York, before migrating to New Jersey. And his mother was from a prominent family in Hanover, New Jersey.
His family was deeply entrenched in the Scotch Plains Baptist Church, and they were a hard-working, rugged farming family. And that ruggedness was put to the test. When the American Revolution broke out, Benjamin and 3 of his brothers all served as soldiers. Stites himself fought in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey militias, eventually becoming a tough, battle-tested captain. He knew how to survive, how to organize men, and how to fight.
He was also a deeply committed family man. He married his wife, Rachel Muchmore, in 1768 when he was just about 20 years old. Rachel was the definition of a resilient frontier woman. She would go on to endure perilous river journeys, floods, and the constant threat of frontier warfare. Together, they built a bustling, massive household of 8 kids.
Uh-oh.
8 kids. Ugh. During the Revolutionary War, Benjamin and Rachel actually sheltered their family at Colonel Henry Enoch's fort in Pennsylvania, living directly alongside Native American inhabitants.
They had 5 sons, John Corwin, Richard, Elijah, Benjamin III, who would actually go on to become a captain himself and serve in the War of 1812, and John Gano Stites, who was likely named after the legendary Revolutionary War Baptist preacher John Gano. They also had 3 daughters, Mary, Rachel, and Phoebe.
After the Revolutionary War, the newly formed United States was dealing with a massive economic depression, and veterans like Stites were looking for new opportunities to support their large families. So he packed up his household, his wife, and all 8 kids and moved them west. But they didn't come straight to Cincinnati. First, they settled in Redstone, Pennsylvania, right on the Monongahela River.
From there, Stites became a frontier trader. He would load up a flatboat and navigate the dangerous winding rivers down into Kentucky. By spring of 1786, he was operating out of a trading post in Limestone, Kentucky, which we now know today as Maysville.
Ah, home to the famous Clooney clan.
Oh.
And that is where the adventure really begins. In 1786, a Native American raiding party crossed the Ohio River into Kentucky, swept through the area near Limestone, and stole some very valuable horses before quickly retreating back into the Ohio country. In the 18th century, stealing a man's horse on the frontier was a devastating blow to their livelihood.
Stites wasn't about to let that go. He rallied a posse of fellow frontiersmen. They tracked the horse thieves to the banks of the Ohio River. They saw that the Native Americans had built a crude raft to cross the water near the mouth of the Little Miami River. Stites and his men did the exact same thing. They built their own raft, crossed the treacherous river, and plunged deep into the dense, untamed Ohio country.
Now, spoiler alert, he never caught the thieves, and he never got the horses back. They tracked them all the way up the Little Miami Valley to the area of present-day Xenia, which is a crazy amount. Is a crazy distance,
pretty much.
Right? And then they finally gave up the chase there.
But as he was hiking back down the Little Miami River empty-handed, he saw something way more valuable than a few horses. He looked out over the massive, lush valleys. He saw the timber, the waterways, and the most fertile, beautiful land he had ever laid eyes on. He completely forgot about the horses. He realized he was looking at the perfect place to build a new civilization.
But there was a massive problem. Stites was a frontier trader and a militia captain. He didn't have any kind of immense capital needed to buy thousands of acres of land from the Continental Congress. If he wanted to build a settlement, he needed a backer. He needed his own Bruce Wayne.
Enter Judge John Cleves Sims. Shout out to my fellow Clevites. Stites knew he had to strike while the iron was hot, so he closed up his trading post, journeyed back to his family in Pennsylvania, and then traveled all the way back to East New Jersey. This must have been a great discussion with his wife.
Where the hell is Cleves, Ohio?
You're gonna
Sorry,
do-
we used to live in Cleves, in
Yeah.
the little sportswear store in town. That was like their best-selling shirt. Where
Right,
the
and-
hell is Cleves, Ohio?
It sounds like a middle-aged man thing going, look, honey, I got a dream. And she's like, oh, God, we have a successful business. What are you doing?
So he did manage to get a meeting with Sims, who was a wealthy, highly influential politician and a former New Jersey delegate to the Continental Congress. Stites sat down with him and pitched his vision. He provided vital geographic information to Judge Sims about the region's incredible settlement potential. He hyped up the fertile land between the Little Miami and the Great Miami Rivers so passionately that Sims was completely sold on the idea.
Sims was so intrigued that he actually traveled down the river himself to see the land Stites was talking about. When he saw it, he knew Stites was right. Sims gathered a group of wealthy investors and bought what became known as the Sims Purchase, or the Miami Purchase. This was a massive land grab of nearly 1 million acres from the United States government. I can't even imagine how large that is.
And as a reward for bringing him the deal of a lifetime, Sims agreed to sell Stites 20,000 acres of the absolute best land right at the mouth of the Little Miami River. And he sold it to him for just 66 cents an acre. The stage was finally set to build a city.
In the fall of 1788, Stites gathered his forces in Limestone, Kentucky. He assembled a group of 26 pioneers. This wasn't just a military expedition, this was a community. The group included his wife Rachel, his children, a couple of his brothers, 3 married women, 2 young girls, and 2 young boys. Many of these families, like the Dunns, had fled persecution in the Northeast.
Now, the Ohio River was incredibly dangerous back then. It was still kind of dangerous, especially when you drink the water.
Well, that's a different reason.
Right? It was filled with hidden debris that could sink a boat in seconds. Strong, unpredictable currents, and the constant, very real threat of attack from Native American tribes, primarily the Shawnee, Miami, and Delaware, who had lived throughout the region for centuries and were fiercely defending their territory.
Because Stites was a seasoned military man, he knew they couldn't just land on the Ohio shore and slowly start chopping down trees. They would be sitting ducks. So while they were still safely in Limestone, they prefabricated their fort. They prepared the lumber, cut the logs, and Stites and his son even built the wooden doors and attached the metal hinges before they ever left Kentucky. That was smart.
So they loaded everything they owned, including these pre-built fort pieces, onto flatbeds. On November 16th, 1788, they pushed off the muddy banks of Limestone and floated down the Ohio River, arriving right before Thanksgiving.
They timed their journey perfectly. They anchored upriver and waited through the freezing night so they could time their arrival for exactly sunrise on November 18th, 1788.
And the tension must have been unbearable. They had heard terrifying frontier rumors that a large native war party might be waiting for them near the mouth of the Little Miami. So before risking the women and children, Stites sent a single canoe with 5 volunteer scouts across the river to check the tree line.
Again, that's a smart guy. The scouts signaled the all clear. The flatboats crossed over and landed at the first high bank, about half a mile below the Little Miami River. Immediately upon landing, it was a scene of intense organized chaos. Sentinels were posted in the woods. Rachel Stites and the other women and children were rushed off the boats and told to hide by sitting down in a thicket of pawpaw trees, while the men stood in a circle around them with their rifles loaded and ready.
Once the perimeter was secure, they tore the wooden boats apart and they used the heavy timber along with the pre-cut lumber they brought from Kentucky to immediately build log cabins using the boat wood for their floors and doors. As more settlers trickled in over the following months, eventually dozens of families found themselves crammed into just 4 chinked log blockhouses. They named this stronghold Fort Miami, and they named their new settlement Columbia.
Interestingly, this specific area later became known as Turkey Bottoms, but survival that first year was incredibly bleak. Before their corn crops could grow, the settlers had to dig up roots and forage just to survive, and they were constantly being watched. Later accounts suggest native observers may have monitored the settlement from the surrounding hills, keeping a close eye on the pioneers down below.
At one point, a party of the Columbia settlers was even chased up into the trees by the Shawnee during a hunting expedition. But amazingly, they ended up making a temporary truce. According to local histories, this led to one of the most incredible legends of early Cincinnati, the first Christmas dinner of 1788.
Later accounts describe it being unseasonably warm that Christmas day, prompting the Columbia settlers to set up a massive table right near the shore of the Ohio River. Because they had only been there a month, they had no crops. They brought out their meager provisions of flour and salt-cured meats. In the spirit of being good neighbors, the story goes that they invited the local Shawnee tribe and military officers to join them for a feast that allegedly included squirrel pot pie.
Squirrel pot pie.
That's, yeah, you know?
Squirrel pot, squirrel pot, squirrel pot.
Yeah, maybe that's why they're so mean to us these days.
Yikes. And they brought their deep-rooted faith with them, too. In 1790, shortly after settling, Stites and his community officially organized the Columbia Baptist Church. It was a massive historical milestone because it was the very first Protestant church established in the entire Northwest Territory.
But the frontier is unforgiving. While they managed to avoid a massive battle on their first day, the true villain in this story turned out to be Mother Nature. In the winter of 1789, the Ohio River flooded massively.
Because of course it did. That's what the Ohio River does.
Yeah. Well,
Stites had built Columbia on beautiful, fertile land, but he didn't realize that it was also a massive floodplain. The water rose so high and so fast that it completely engulfed the settlement. It was so deep that the soldiers stationed at Fort Miami had to steer their wooden canoes straight through the doors of the blockhouses just to get inside the second floors.
the flood caused complete chaos, and unfortunately, the Shawnee took advantage of the situation and ran off with all the horses belonging to the Columbia settlers. Because Columbia was underwater so often, many families had had enough and moved to higher ground, forming settlements like Elizabethtown and what would eventually become Mariemont.
The military also realized they couldn't defend it properly, so they moved their main headquarters slightly downriver to higher ground. They built Fort Washington in a little rival settlement called Losantiville, which, as we know from issue number 4, was soon renamed Cincinnati.
As Cincinnati grew and thrived on that higher ground, Columbia stalled out. But the real tragedy for Stites came from the paperwork. Remember his wealthy backer, Judge Sims?
Right. Sims might have been a good politician, but he was a terrible surveyor, and his land deals were notoriously, let's say, disorganized. He sold land that he didn't actually own. His overlapping claims created years of legal chaos, and the federal government eventually stepped in to audit the entire Miami purchase.
Stites had risked his life, his family, and his fortune to build this settlement. But because of Sims' sloppy bookkeeping, Stites spent the rest of his life tangled in massive, stressful legal battles over his 20,000 acres. He ended up losing almost all of his land and his hard-earned wealth.
He never gave up on the Queen City, though. He served in the local militia defense during the Northwest Indian War. He remained in the area he founded until his final days. Benjamin Stites died relatively poor on his own farm in Columbia in 1804.
Let's enter the Hall of Justice to see how we remember the man who started it all.
Columbia didn't disappear beneath the flood or the local paperwork. Today it is known as Columbia-Tusculum, and it holds the incredibly proud title of Cincinnati's oldest neighborhood.
And it's practically right in our own backyard. If you drive along the river through Columbia-Tusculum today, you can see those beautiful, brightly colored, painted lady Victorian homes clinging to the hillsides. That vibrant, historic community sits right on the very land Benjamin Stites discovered.
And if you visit the Pioneer Memorial Cemetery, which is tucked right near Lunken Airport, you are standing on the exact site of the original 1788 Columbia settlement. It is the only surviving remnant of the original settlement. Stites actually deeded those 2 acres of land for that cemetery to the Baptists of Columbia Township himself.
Over time, the cemetery had fallen into total disrepair. But in 1967, an ex-park board director named Fred Payne inspired a massive preservation effort to clean it up and honor these early founders.
The original monument to Major Benjamin Stites is standing right here today. But there is another incredible accolade. In 1888, a massive monument was erected to commemorate the heroism of that very first boatload of settlers.
And the coolest part about that pillar, it wasn't carved from scratch. It was created using one of the massive Corinthian stone pillars saved from Cincinnati's early post office. The names of Major Stites, his wife Rachel, and several of their children are inscribed right on the stone.
Beyond the statues, his real legacy is the very ground that we walk on. His scouting trip and subsequent pitch to Judge Sims directly influenced the federal land grant known as the Sims Purchase. Benjamin Stites didn't just lay the foundation for Cincinnati, his vision helped lay the foundation for the entire state of Ohio.
He didn't find the stolen horses, but he identified the Queen City. Issue 8 is in the books. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this piece of local history with a friend.
We'll see you in the next issue. Thanks for joining us for
Quote the Queen City.